Hi everyone, meteorologist Ed Valley here taking a look at South America. And we're going to be talking here about the pattern as we head through the rest of 2021 and into 2022. So you can see here, just looking at the snapshot of the model here today, we're seeing a pretty classic La Nina setup. Very wet in Brazil, some moisture in northern Argentina, but notice southern Brazil and southern Argentina remains on the drier side here. And that's going to be a topic we're going to touch on here today. So I want to start looking at our report. We're going to touch on the rains this weekend. Good rains down in central and southern Argentina, Saturday into Sunday, and then northern Argentina Sunday into Monday. But notice southern Brazil continues to lean dry. And you can see the last 72 and 168 hours, 7 days. You can see, again, most, if not all of that heavy stuff is centered up in central Brazil, with southern Brazil on the drier side. But notice Argentina continues to see quite a bit of rainfall, really over the last 3 to 7 days. So we're doing pretty well in Argentina, all things considered. You notice the 30-day amounts here, pretty significant in Argentina. But again, it's southern Brazil that continues to lean driest, including Mato Grosso do Sul. So it's a pretty good chunk of Brazil that's on the drier side. And if you look at the root zone soil moisture, you can see southern Brazil is really where that issue is starting to arise, right? So let's go through this and just talk about what we're going to be seeing for the week ahead. And we do have moisture this week in southern Brazil. That's very important we verify because, again, if we don't see more moisture, it's going to be one of the driest November, Decembers in southern Brazil we've seen in quite some time. So with that said, we do have moisture here through today into tonight in southern Brazil, including Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, Santa Catarina, Mato Grosso do Sul. So it's a good coverage through the middle of the week. Through Wednesday, you can see more storms here on Wednesday, especially in Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul and north. And as we head through the remainder of the week, more storms in Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná. But notice we're drying out to end the week in most of Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul and in Argentina. As we head into the weekend, you see there are occasional storms here. You notice Cordoba right here, Buenos Aires right here. Some storms possible in western Argentina through the weekend. But the key here is after this early week rain, we're going to start drying this pattern out in southern Brazil. Okay, so rainfall through the week looks like this. You notice the European, we touched on this last week. I think it's overdone in parts of Rio Grande do Sul, but you notice decent coverage. But look at the GFS. Notice it's a little bit spottier. This rain is good. Is it enough to bust the drought given what we've seen recently and have coming up dry-wise? No. The answer is no. This is just enough to kind of settle the dust, and it'll, if we can overperform some of these rains, that would be great. But we got to verify that to get any sort of excitement, right? Now, you see the Canadian has a heavier cluster as well in parts of Rio Grande do Sul. But again, the spotty nature of these storms is going to make verification crucial because if we can overperform, yes, that's going to be favorable. But if we even come in at expectation or below, I don't think that's very good, obviously, given how dry we've been and how dry we look moving forward. Speaking of, let's talk about that. The 5 to 10 day on the European remains very dry. Southern Brazil, eastern Argentina. Notice, though, on the GFS, it is wetter in Argentina, but still dry in southern Brazil. That, to me, tells me that the focus needs to be on southern Brazil. Okay? The Canadian model's kind of in between. And this actually looks like a pretty good look here in the 5 to 10 day. Scattered rains in Argentina, good rains up in Brazil. But again, southern Brazil looks dry. And if we transfer up into Brazil, you'll notice, again, good rain in Brazil through the end of this month. Really good rain. Here's the 10 to 15 day from all the models as well. This really takes us through the 28th or so of the month. Great rain in Brazil. So this is really not a Mato Grosso story, a Goiás story, even a Mato Grosso do Sul story. This is a southern Mato Grosso do Sul southward story. Okay. Now, it's related to the MJO. We are going into phase 7 as we head into the Christmas time frame. What does that yield? Well, it yields this. It's a wetter look in Argentina, which is why I think the European model here, especially in the 5 to 10 days, too dry in central Argentina. So my focus is really in southern Brazil right now. And you might say, well, what leads me to believe that that's the case? Well, again, here's phase 7 MJO. It's a wet look in Argentina, drier in southern Brazil. And really, that's exactly what the GFS ensemble is showing here. It's a dry look in southern Brazil, wetter the further west one travels in Argentina. I think that's right. Now, notice here, though, as we head into the beginning of January, this is coming back. And I think what's going to happen here is if we look at some of our other data, it really gives us a good idea of what's coming here when you look at what we call the MJO. And I don't want to get too technical here, but see these green areas? That's areas of upward motion. That's where the MJO wave is. So right now, remember I just said we're in phase 7, right? Look at this. Strong MJO wave right here. You go down. Oh, bad arrow. I apologize. It's phase 7. So that's where your phase 7 is coming from. But notice it kind of dies out here as we head towards the turn of the year. And then the green colors start to emerge out in phases 1, 2, and 3. You notice that's also the case here on some of our other data. Really intense wave, it weakens, and then it reemerges here in phase 3 towards the first half of January. So what does that look like? Well, phase 1 or phase 2 and 3. Phase 2 is actually kind of wet in Argentina. Phase 3 does start to dry out. So when you look at our longer term information here, we're noticing that the GFS model is wetter than the European. My hunch is that the answer lies somewhere in between. However, you see this phase 1 and 2 risk that would lead to some moisture in Argentina, whereas the European model here, if you look at it, is just completely dry. I think this is just too dry. Given the MJO forcing we're going to see, I think there is some room for moisture here in Argentina. But again, the issues are going to be in southern Brazil, maybe far northeastern Argentina through the beginning of January. So we're still concerned that a lot of southern Brazil is going to be on the drier side as we press through the last half of December and into the first half of January. And that's really where all of the concern is going to be as we press into early 2022. So definitely plenty of stuff to go over. And stuff to watch here. One, I think the GFS might have a leg up here through the end of December versus the European, thanks to that MJO pulse. But as we head into the beginning of January, I think the European weeklies also are too dry. And the answer likely lies somewhere in between the GFS ensemble, which leans a little wetter, and obviously the European weeklies, which are very, very dry. So plenty of stuff to watch here. The concern, again, focused on southern Brazil. We'll see how these weekend rains, these early week rains perform, and we'll verify them in our reports this week. And we'll have much more coming your way in our audio files throughout the week. Have a great day.